Hi there. Well, this is Sarah. You all know me, and you can see underneath her picture that I'm bringing to you Angie Garton, someone that I was introduced to only this fall, but I am so enjoying following her on Facebook and Instagram, but also having conversations with Angie. So, Angie, I'd love it if you could just introduce yourself.
Sure, yeah. I live in Scotland in the UK. I don't, this is not a Scottish accent. I used to live in England, that's where I was brought up. But I moved in the UK, I would say quite a long way, but it's only a few hundred miles. It's probably not much to you guys. But for me, it was a big move a few years ago for lots of different reasons. And it was partly a catalyst for how I wanted to live my life and who I wanted to be, and
Awesome.
lots of different reasons behind that. And I now work with women through menopause, and I help women who are a bit lost and confused about the whole thing and wondering where all these crazy symptoms are coming from
Right.
and what stage of menopause they're really at, because periods are a bit askew and going a bit mad. And I help them to understand where they sit in amongst all of that and what reasons are behind the symptoms. And I help them in a very natural and holistic way to get their life back, really, to live how they want to live.
That's really awesome. And one of the things you and I have talked about is the approach that you have really applies to women like me, and like most of my clients are postmenopausal, not all of them, but that your approach is really it's really the same. When you recognize that this hormonal change is happening,
Mm,
it has implications for how we lead our lives for the rest of our lives.
absolutely. Yeah, it really
Yeah.
does. I
And
tend to liken it to a bit of a map. We've been following a map of health, a health kind of map on our journey through life. Through we start to get more involved in that through our 20s and early 30s. Maybe we have children, maybe we don't, maybe we just want to do well at work, at home. And we have this particular way of living our lives and developing our own health, and we feel good with that. And then these hormones start to come along and kind of change that. We're needing a different map, and that
right.
is the same from perimenopause through to postmenopause and beyond that. In order to stay healthy and live how we want to live, it's about following a different map at that stage.
So if you were only given an elevator speech amount of time to pick the pillars of your process, the map you want to give people, what are those main pillars?
Yeah, I tend to call it like foundations of hormonal balance, because
Right.
it is it's very much trying to build a house from the ground up and not build it on sand. I live near the beach. If I tried to
So
build
do
my house
I.
down there, it's not a great foundation. So we need some solid blocks. So for me, there's five of those big bricks, those big rocks that we
Right.
need to have at the base. And number one, we need to be hydrated. We need enough water,
Mm-hmm.
because nothing works in the body unless we've got the correct kind of hydration. And then after that, we need to be eating the right kind of foods. So that one's number two.
Yep.
And that's where that different map comes in, because what we term as healthy foods and foods that make us feel good in our 40s, 50s, 60s are slightly different to when we were
Right.
20 and 30. So food's important. And then coming on to rest and sleep
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
kind of putting those together. Yeah. And then, of course, we've got exercise. That's our number four. Exercise, appropriate kind of exercise. Yeah, that's a
Right.
big one. And then number five is all about fun and adventure. So
Yeah.
that's something that I frequently see being overlooked, but
Right.
I've got it right there as a foundation. That's essential.
I totally agree with you. You have to like what you're doing or you're not going to keep doing it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So let me take you back. I think we all agree on hydration, but let's look at food.
Hmm.
And what are the biggest aha moments that your clients have had about food?
Wow. Yeah. Recently ran a 30-day program for my clients for a small group. And some of their biggest aha moments were around vegetables.
Yeah,
I'm not vegan, and I don't go in for the extremes of diets.
right.
I'm not a big fan of everything in moderation either. I think that's a bit of a gateway drug, if you like, if we start using that
Yeah,
phrase.
I can see that. Okay. Yeah.
But in my group in Balance 30, they were really surprised when I started to ask them to count over the course of 7 days how many different vegetables they ate. Not serving sizes, but
Right.
just the variety.
Actual separate
Yeah.
vegetables.
So they kept a list on the fridge,
Uh-huh.
and just every time they would prepare a meal or eat something and it was a vegetable included, they would write that down. And if they'd already had it earlier in the week, it didn't go on the list.
Yeah,
We were only writing down new ones to get the full variety.
that's brilliant.
So that was a big aha moment because I then explained how important the variety of vegetables
Yeah.
were to them, and they were a bit shocked at what they were doing. And then very quickly they were changing their habits.
Yeah. It's funny you bring that up because I mentioned to you in an offline comment about the Walls Protocol, the book I'm reading by Dr. Terry Walls, where she reversed her MS symptoms. She still has MS, but she's not on medication and she's out of her wheelchair, and she did it really not with supplementation as much as food. And one of her primary things is new vegetables and use it as a joyful adventure. So she's right with you there in saying, how many new vegetables can you find? And it's really pretty hard in a conventional grocery store in the United States. I don't know about Scotland and England. It was so long ago that I lived there, but you have to work hard to determine what is local and what is not. And because she's really saying, pretend you're back in time and you don't have imported mangoes from Peru. And go with what's seasonal in your area. And so that will mean that the fruit selection is harder if you live in Alaska. It's non-existent. But it is interesting that there are nutrients that natives in Alaska or northern Canada were able to find. You just have to tweak your brain and try a little harder.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating, and I like your approach. And because she challenges people, she tries to get 240 different vegetables in her body in the course of a year. That's
Wow.
overwhelming.
That's a lot, isn't it? I like to break it down into weeks and
Me
say
too.
20, 30. Aim for 30. We have a 20 to 30 margin and trying to go for the higher.
And that's
side.
for a month?
So that's over the course of a week.
Over 1 week. So that's still pretty hard.
Yeah, yeah. But when we start to look at where they're coming from, I'm not as strict as Terry as trying to make it seasonal. So I'm including olives, kimchi,
Right.
all of the condiments as well.
Okay, now we're talking sauerkraut.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was about to think, oh, I'm going to have to cheat and use every herb as a vegetable.
Yeah,
Because I don't know if I can think of 30 that I could get locally. La 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 la. But of course, I do think, um, again, you and I have talked before about chunking things down. I do think about chunking it down and saying, well, let's not approach the local thing today. Let's just go for variety. And if I have 3 favorite vegetables and I rotate them every week in, every week out, then maybe I'm looking for 7.
yeah,
And then the next week I'm looking for 14.
yeah.
And then then it's easier to see yourself getting
Yeah,
closer to 30 in a week.
absolutely. And the benefits that you feel hormonally and physically, emotionally, mentally, you start to clock those benefits up and start to reap the rewards rather than it being a big stretch. I'm trying to think of how can I plus one this if I'm saying I'm 5 out of 10 on
Right.
this at the moment, how can I make it 6 out of 10?
Right.
Which is a bit more manageable.
Yeah, and it goes back to what I have said before is what can I do tomorrow?
Yeah.
And if that's one new vegetable or maybe a vegetable you haven't had in a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
So you mentioned a word that gets me thinking. You said hormones.
Uh-huh.
And we certainly know a lot is going on. And I'd love to segue to another one of your foundational pieces, which is exercise. But I think I'd like to start it by saying, tell us about how this hormonal change changes how we exercise.
It really should change how we exercise, but sometimes we try and battle on with doing the same thing. Through our 40s and 50s and 60s, our hormones are altering. We're having a different landscape on the inside. And if we're not accommodating that or reflecting that in what we're doing exercise wise and all of the other components, then we are starting to battle with ourselves. So what's happening on the inside is we can become more sensitive to some of the changes that we're feeling. We can experience bigger fluctuations in stress hormones and insulin as well. So that can affect things like energy, sleep, motivation, even anxiety. Lots of different symptoms can be thrown off from those factors. Things that you wouldn't necessarily link even with hormones.
Right.
So the way that we exercise really does need to be addressed for that, and we can help ourselves. But weight is a big factor for a lot of my clients, because in the UK we have this thing that smaller is better. It's still going on.
Oh, don't think you're alone in that one.
It's crazy. And even 50, 60-year-old clients, I will still have those same conversations of body image and confidence.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And trying to look attractive to our partners and ourselves, and the definitions around that are still in our mind, that 20-year-old definition, because we're the same person, right? Nothing's changed in here. And I don't mean we've got to lower our standards, but at some point that judgment needs to be addressed, because our exercise, we can't do what we did in our 20s, in our teenage years, and expect that to still work. We can't do half an hour on the bike, a 30-minute jog outside, nice, slow and steady with the dog, or easy weights and just stand in the mirror and do your bicep curls, and that's job done at the gym. Those things aren't really going to help those hormonal shifts. They're not really going to help ourselves on the inside or the outside. So we're looking at accommodating what's happening in here by making smaller changes. We still need to do the exercise. A big issue is when we get, particularly women my age in our 40s, and certainly in our 50s, I've got a few clients who are now retired, and they're noticing this as well, that we spend a lot of time doing this, sitting down, because
Uh-huh.
we've either retired and we don't have to be busy, or we've got a really good job, we're working on our career, and there's a lot of time sat at a desk, which
Yes.
is great, but we can't just expect that half an hour at the gym 3 times a week is going to solve
Right.
that.
And here's an interesting opposite end of that stick, because I also have women who discover post 50 that the brutal boot camp, and here I am with bone boot camp, and I'm, but
Yeah,
mine is not that, but that
not
beach
military.
body, yeah,
Yeah.
that beach body or that military hyper focus, burpees, killing it, no pain,
Uh-huh.
no gain approach. We also find that at that end of the spectrum, that doesn't work either anymore.
Absolutely. And who wants to be jumping up and down when you're worried that you're going to wet yourself every 5 minutes, or you've got a muffin top and everything's wobbling, and it's
Yeah,
just uncomfortable, and that no wonder there are confidence issues.
right.
And still we're looking, because we are told by all these different
Media.
media in general, I think, isn't it? And
Yeah,
and people that we aspire to look like or to be, then if they're doing that, then must work for me as well. Or
right,
perhaps it's worked for me in the past, so I just need to try harder at that. But it's
right.
very extreme, isn't it? And
Yeah,
that goes for me, it goes into that feeling of battling my own body again. And I've spent decades trying to get my head around dropping the battle and
right,
making friends with what's going on in here. I don't want to take up another scenario where I'm at war with myself. But
right.
yeah, it's a
Yes,
tricky one.
it is. And my understanding, layman's understanding, is that we are now in a place, because of the interplay of your sex hormones with cortisol and the intimate relationship between them,
Mm.
and the building blocks being the same, that that super stressful workout could raise your cortisol levels much more easily
Uh-huh.
postmenopausal for sure, and
Yeah.
probably perimenopause years, that you're not going to drop any pounds, you're not going to trim your waist, you're going
Mm.
to put your body in a situation where it's stressed out and trying to preserve.
That's it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you're in fight or flight.
Yeah. Which is the exact opposite of how we need to be if we're going to drop any weight, or if we just want to feel good and sleep well and have energy, because that means if we're in that fight or flight, then the brain, the body is constantly getting nudged, tap on the shoulder, come on, be ready, we're going to fight something, we're going to run. And that is exhausting in many
Right.
different ways. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So,
it also means that we're more likely to pile it on around the waist. We've got all those factors around the middle, and that's metabolically active, we say. So we're more likely to hold that cortisol, that stress around the middle, and make the situation even worse.
right. And that is such a funny thing, that we also know that that fat around the middle is a heart risk.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting, because it happens because of a survival mechanism, an ancient survival mechanism.
Mm.
But in the end, too much of it, and it's anti-survival.
Yeah. Yeah. It's finding the sweet spot, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
it's that awful word of that metabolic syndrome, which sounds horrendous, but it's that whole clumping together of different issues, including weight and waist and hip ratios, and finding the sweet spot between not trying to be not trying to be thin and slim to the point of it being detrimental to who we are and how we want to live and health,
Right.
but also encouraging a healthy weight because we need some muscle mass, we need some weight on
Right.
us as well. And
Right.
part of it as well, around the middle, some of our, I think, and I was taught, I believe this as well, that a little bit of extra weight and not to the extreme, but a little bit there is healthy. It's fine. It's actually becoming a hormone factory, an estrogen factory,
Right.
and that is a protective
Yes,
mechanism again.
it is. And that you just brought up a point I was going to ask you about, because I know you've talked about it before. I don't think all women realize that we're not producing the same estrogen that we used to produce,
That's right. Yeah.
but we can produce some ourselves.
Yes.
And it helps to explain why we have more fat around the middle.
Yeah.
So
That's
I'm going to
right.
leave it to you to say in your good, solid terms.
Yeah. Yeah, we have we talk of estrogen or estrogen, we say over here, and we think of it as one hormone, but there's three types,
Right.
and at different times in our life we're producing each of those. And when we get through menopause and we're coming out the other side to post-menopause, there's a particular type of estrogen that we still need, because all of these hormones are important, right? We still need the messages that those hormones are carrying to get through around the body. Estrogen is a busy hormone. So the body doesn't just stop making it. We still produce it. And the way that we do that is from different parts of the body. Some of it is from fat cells, a very small amount. And the other big one, although it's a small amount, it's very, very important, is from our adrenals. And there's
Yeah.
some in the brain as well. But yeah, the adrenal glands are, that links in partly to my foundations of sleep, rest, food as well, and also the
Right.
adventure and fun part of it too.
Right. Right. And yeah, the adrenals are so important for good sleep. And
Yes.
as I think you and I talked about being fans of Dr. Matthew Walker's book,
Yeah.
and I love his shocking statement where he says being awake is low-level brain damage.
Yeah.
And it's he means it to get your attention, and it's really just the inverse of saying you really need to sleep.
Yeah. But it does, it grabs your attention. It is pretty shocking when you think of it that
Yeah.
way, when we've spent a long time being all about burning the candle at both ends and trying to
Right.
get as much done and pack as much into the day as possible.
Right. And the ability to fall asleep is linked to the cortisol and your adrenals.
Yes.
And so doing some good things for yourself to run off a little energy. So exercise that you and I both promote that is appropriate.
Yes.
And we both agree that we need to do things that give us a sense of peace, whether it's meditation or a walk in the woods, whatever it is that can help you down regulate. Maybe it's just taking a restorative pose and putting your legs up a wall. I really sense that the way you've explained it to your clients as a foundation is
Yeah.
in keeping with how I think about it. So that's, of course, why I'm interviewing you.
Yeah. Yeah, we're definitely on the same page with that one. Yeah.
Right. But I like your approach by adding in the fun.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It serves a few purposes because, like you mentioned at the beginning, if it's going to be helpful to us, then we need to stick with those and be consistent with it. But I'm only going to do those if I enjoy it, right?
Right.
If it's going to come to a point of me saying, oh, thank God that's over, every time I do some kind of exercise or eat some kind of food or do
Right.
something that is what I term as hormonally helpful, then I'm only going to do that for so long. There's only so much willpower I can push myself
Right.
through. But the fun element comes in there, that I need to find a way either to enjoy it or tweak what I'm doing, because there's more than three vegetables I could choose. There's more than one way of exercising. Lots of different ways to tweak it. But the other thing is, with the fun and the adventure, is trying to. I'm always encouraging my clients to think of not just their habits in that fun and adventure way, but approaching life in general and
Yeah.
doing things for themselves, because quite often they've raised families or had an important career, and kind of coming out on the other side of that, and again this hormonal element to it, that they're starting to wonder, what's life about now. I've kind of ticked a lot of these life boxes, so what about me now? And that can be both exciting and also a little bit unnerving. So if we can inject some fun and adventure into that and give them a direction, so it's not too scary, and I can help them understand how important it is, to take that approach, then they start to load their plate up with more of the things that give them joy, give them a spark, give them some inspiration, because
Right.
that's where the real purpose for life comes from, and inspiration and motivation to do all of the other helpful stuff.
Yeah. Excellent. So, if the people watching this podcast, eventual podcast, right now it's an interview, but we may use it. This is such a good interview. We may use it for launching the podcast, or at least promoting it. And I'll have to have you back
Excellent.
for more. How would people find you online?
They can find me on my website. So that's angiegarton.com. That's TON, angiegarton.com. There's some freebies on there. There's the usual blog posts. I'm very, very chatty. I write as I talk, so you can hear me as you read my stuff on there. I've also got a Facebook page, a personal page and a business page, and I kind of use them interchangeably as well. So I'm on Facebook. A lot of my stuff's on my personal wall there on Angie Garton, or my professional page is Body Evolution Formula.
Okay,
A
I think I'm going
throwback.
to have to write that down in the notes so people
Oh,
can
sure.
find that.
Sure, yeah.
All right, I will provide links so everybody can find it.
No problem,
So,
yeah.
thank you so much for coming on. I think we really covered a lot of things that apply to people 60, 70, 80. We all are dealing with how to work inside this body that's not the way it was as we were learning and gaining our knowledge about food and exercise. Things
Yeah,
have changed inside.
yeah. And that doesn't mean that the best is behind us.
Right.
We can move on and still live and create a better version of ourselves, if you like. It's not all downhill from here by any
No,
means.
it certainly is not. It is not. I won't accept
No
that.
way.
Well, Angie, thank you so much. And I'm going to end the podcast. Say goodbye to everybody.
Goodbye for
And
now.
yeah,
I'll be
goodbye.